Zelensky's now calling for a no-fly zone. He asked for one on a
I've
Zoom
been
call
seeing this, and
with
it is
people yesterday.
really fucking dangerous. I don't blame him. He's trying to save his country and his government. I don't blame him, but it's frightening because of these things can gain their own momentum.
Yeah, yeah. This
When you see the Paralympics banning Russian athletes, in just really absurd and over the top gesture. Now we're down that road of burn the witch. Now when that part of the human brain gets engaged, you just don't know where that's going to go.
The Metropolitan Opera House just fired one of
I
their
saw that.
biggest singers because she didn't directly condemn Putin. She did say she did like condemn the invasion and called for Russia to withdraw, but she didn't, I guess, say the exact thing they wanted her to say, so they fired her. Right, and they replaced her with, oddly enough, a Ukrainian opera singer. And so, yeah, I mean, there's that element, but like the more urgent element, not that that's not a valid thing to talk about.
When things get hysterical like this, well, yes, these things are trivial, but they indicate something that's not. It's we're getting into a moral panic.
You're getting into a situation where like people are actually supporting a third world war. Like,
right.
It's like,
that,
wow.
That's why I'm saying
I thought World War III was a bad thing. I thought we didn't want World War III. Right. I thought that's something that we like wanted to avoid. And it seems to me like, no, we don't. So look, I've been getting as informed about this as I possibly can. This is new for like millennials like me. Like we're used to, like, I'm trying to write this article about how I feel about this. And it's taken a long time because there's a lot to sort out. Because as someone, in his mid 30s, like I was 14 years old on 9/11. Like my experience of warfare in my lifetime has basically been this like civilizational clash between, Islamic terrorists and then like awfully disproportionate responses by the West. We're not used to this kind of white on white violence. We're not like the only time we ever really learned about Eastern European art, history, culture, and politics was like from like the Grand Budapest Hotel. Like that was the most I ever looked into, just when that movie came out. Like we're not used to processing it in this way. And it's funny because I always kind of thought that, well, war as a clash of civilizations is sort of very easy for people to get riled up about because it's our way of life versus this like throwback, 6th century, way of life. And so that's why, there's such this war fervor when something happens. But it turns out, I think I kind of maybe had it a little backwards. Like, it's almost like, not that there was a strong anti-war movement in this country after 9/11. There obviously wasn't. But there were massive demonstrations against the Iraq War when it happened. And, perhaps the reason for that is because people were not like people's lizard brains were not as activated by a sort of white on brown 21st century versus 6th century conflict as they are when it is white on white sort of intracontinental warfare. Because when they see Ukrainians being shelled, they think I can be shelled, right? When they see Baghdad going up in flames, it's not real. It's okay. I mean, the guy, we played the clip on the last show we did, the guy on CBS comes out. He says, well, we're not used to seeing this violence in a civilized country like Ukraine. We're used to seeing it in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so perhaps
what is the fate of
in the media?
Was he suspended or what?
I have no idea.
He gave an apology.
Oh, he did?
I was just listening to a different show, and then we're doing a whole segment about the racism in exactly that, and it was just
he wasn't
clip after clip after clip after clip.
No. Well, the whole thing. I mean, we can get into that in a few minutes. I mean, the whole thing is a very racist thing in a certain
that's
way.
What I'm saying.
And we are not a podcast that traffics in identity politics. We're not seeking out white supremacy under every turn. So when we are saying yes, there's a racist element to this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's because there is, right? Okay, but it's almost like when people see Ukraine being invaded, they take it very personally because those are other white people, and this is a majority white country. And so we now are super dug in, stand with Ukraine, long live Ukraine. And look, God bless the people of Ukraine. I wouldn't wish it, obviously, they are not the aggressors here. And so anybody who is going over there to help out, like Joey's friend, obviously, Godspeed, wish you all the best. I wish Zelensky all the best. I wish the Ukrainian people nothing but the best, of course. That's not what I'm saying. But this jingoism and sort of warrior spirit that's being fed from the West to Ukraine seems to be, I think, doing a lot more harm than good. As I understand it right now, there are three ways forward. One is peace talks, diplomacy, which is going to be read in the media as surrender, not particularly unfairly, by the way. They could surrender to what Russia's demands are.
We could have started there, though.
Well, yeah. Well, that's
sorry.
Yes. No, obviously, yes. Number two, a ceasefire. I mean, I'm sorry, not a ceasefire, a no-fly zone, which a lot of the liberals calling for a no-fly zone don't understand what that means.
Well,
a no-fly zone means that U.S. and NATO forces would almost certainly end up shooting down a Russian plane, which would be the start of the Third World War. Okay.
Right.
That's number two. Number three seems to be the strategy that we are pursuing right now, which was where we're going to support Ukraine. We're going to fund Ukraine. We're going to send weapons into Ukraine. We're going to make it easier for other countries. Poland now wants to send fighter planes into Ukraine. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken gave them the quote unquote green light to do that. So option three is like the option of just continuing to prop up the Ukrainian army and drag this fight out. Hillary Clinton said Afghanistan and Syria could be a model for this, where we just extend this fighting and prolong this fighting on and on and on. And hope, I mean, you see Zelensky ask for a no-fly zone. You say he tells the leaders, anybody else who dies now, it's on your hands because you're not giving us what we need to win this war. It's very, very scary where this is going. This does not seem to be getting any closer to détente. It seems to be getting closer and closer to World War III. It's almost as if the strategy of the West is not to impose a no-fly zone, because that would accelerate us into a third world war at such a pace where it would be pretty obvious that we instigated it in a major way. If we just fund the resistance and have day by day by day, massacre by massacre by massacre, city by city falling, people getting killed, at a certain point, they're going to be able to say, okay, now Putin is Hitler. Now we have to go. We're at the end of our rope. There was not a serious attempt at diplomacy before this happened, which is, Laura, what you just said. And there is not any serious attempt at diplomacy now. This is going one way, the wrong way. And everybody who is, and I noticed this has kind of dropped off this week. We're not seeing as many feel-good stories about billionaires' yachts being seized and, Ukrainian villagers torching Russian tanks. The news is getting worse. And hopefully at some point, this is a wake-up call to these fucking morons in this country that this is not a movie. This is not a video game. This is not a romance epic. This is war. This is hell.
Not our new leading man.
Right, exactly. This
you
is
guys have
war.
seen
This is hell. This has to stop. It has to stop. And the only prayer is that will become the majority opinion. But it doesn't seem on track for that.
Remember,
to happen,
Keaton, it's not just the racial component. Jesus fucking Christ! The libs have been primed to go apoplectic at the mention of Putin's name for what, 5-6 years now. they've been driven to madness with Russia, from Russiagate on down. I mean, they've been at least as thoroughly indoctrinated with Russophobia as the American public was in 1958. So yeah, man. I mean, look, Putin gave them the pretext, but of course they're all like, yeah, no, I mean, this is what they've been kind of manipulated into thinking they want, right? We've been said it all through Russiagate. Well, so what are you going to do? Are you going to sign up to fight the Russians? Every time they said, "Oh, Trump needs to get tougher on the Russians," you guys going down to the recruiting office, you're going to be the last motherfuckers at that recruiting office.
I
So
said
what the
that
fuck
shit.
are you talking about?
I said that shit before Trump was elected. I said that in the run up to the 2016 election when you started seeing, and because like the door faction of the left was very ridiculed at the time for sort of fear mongering about Hillary's going to start a war with Russia if she wins. Mm-hmm. Well, they don't look too fucking crazy right now, do they? Because look where the fuck we are. So maybe we weren't just fear mongering. Maybe those fears were actually well founded. And so, look, I mean, at this point, I mean, what does the priority have to be here? What does the priority have to be? The priority has to be some sort of negotiation. It just has to be. I don't see any other way for this to end. Like what we're doing now seems the slow march to World War III, to the point where I almost have more respect for the people calling for a ceasefire, because at least they're willing to put their cards on the table and say, here, this will either work and we will deter the Russians from further action, or it won't and we'll blow the whole fucking thing up. Then it's on. That at least makes some sort of coherent sense. This doesn't. This just seems like a drip, drip, drip. We're just going to let more and more people get fucking killed every single day until it gets to a point where we decide it's not tolerable anymore and we go to war anyway. That's what seems to be in the works right now. And it's fucking maniacal. It's insanity. It's fucking insanity. Like our friend Denise said, put these people back in charge, give these fucking, neo-lib New World Order ghouls, give them the keys to the car and you watch where you end up. You watch. Yeah. And you know what? The guy's right.
Well, everybody's been all over. Oh, Bill Barr's new memoir. He says such terrible things about Donald Trump. But you know what else he actually said in that memoir? And now I saw an article that talked about that. He talked about, and a lot of us said it, how the Democrats and the media tied his hands in creating some kind of détente with Putin. They made it impossible for him to do that. Right from the beginning, you have fucking psychopath Rachel Maddow framing Donald Trump pulling troops out from the Russian border as proof that he's a Russian agent. If he does it, it's proof that he's a Russian agent. There's no other reason he could pull U.S. troops out of that region. Right. So how could he have a détente with Putin? And Barr actually says in his memoir, there's probably a better foreign policy than hating Putin. That's not a foreign policy. And, that damaged the Trump administration's ability to have a better relationship with Russia, which it obviously did.
Well, there was this insane segment on MSNBC that Chris Hayes did. And the title of the YouTube clip is like, why didn't Putin invade under Trump? Right. And it was this 8-minute segment. And if I play it now, we'll get throttled because NBC throttled us last time. So I'm going to put this up on YouTube. I'm going to pre-record it and put it out where I'm going to play the whole segment because it's just amazing. The crux is the conclusion that he draws is that Putin didn't do this when Trump was president because he didn't have to. He already had a stooge in power, which is just beyond idiotic. If you think this, what the fuck does that even mean? I mean, that is as shallow as a clapback tweet. Like that's all it is. There's actually no substance whatsoever beyond. What do you mean he didn't invade Ukraine because he didn't have to? Well, first of all, even in some bizarre universe where that makes sense, it's still preferable to what we have now, which is he invaded Ukraine.
Right.
like, even if I accept your conclusion, and then he plays this clip where Trump is being interviewed by Tucker Carlson. And like I said, I'm going to put this up on YouTube on our channel. So subscribe to YouTube, to our YouTube channel, because this will be up sometime this week. But he plays this clip of Donald Trump talking about some small Eastern European, like one of the tiny ones there, about some Eastern European country, how Trump doesn't want them in NATO because he says they're very strong people. They're very aggressive people. They're very aggressive. And Trump basically says, like, if we let them into NATO and then they get aggressive with Russia, that could be World War III.
Right.
Which makes perfect fucking sense.
Yeah, it actually makes better sense than a lot of what we're hearing.
Well, I mean, as a self-contained statement, like I don't know the specifics of what country it was or what they exactly wanted, but just that statement in alone, if you let a country into NATO that's too hot-headed and they do something stupid, that could trigger a third world war, which we don't want. Like that as a self-contained political sentiment makes perfect fucking sense. And the fact that it's being presented on MSNBC as some like nefarious, like just like almost like treasonous sentiment, it's totally bizarre. It's totally bizarre. The video is 8 minutes long and there's more to it, so I have to play the whole thing and I'll put it up on YouTube. But that's just the level of just insanity that we're dealing with now. You look at Occupy Democrats, the stupid shit lib meme generator page, all just like it's a movie, man. They got their Zelensky is their Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan now, man. Like
no, they've literally made movie poster memes.
Oh yeah,
gross.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Well, and this is what I'm saying. Like you're talking about, we're not protesting, and it's partly against the war, partly because of race. And yeah, I mean that's definitely an element of it, but a lot of it is who would there be to protest? I mean, the libs and a good portion of what you would call the left has been so indoctrinated with the Russophobia and the Russiagate narrative. Like a good portion of like Sanders people also buy into that shit.
Well,
so
look,
who's left to make us think about it?
Well, look, there's us. This is real, but like this is real, actual gut level racism. And I tend to like even calling it racism kind of makes it feel a bit more like consciously insidious than it is, because a lot of these people on the left would say, no, of course I support the Palestinian people, of course I support the Yemeni people, but it doesn't hit you at that gut
not with your
level.
Bitcoin, you don't.
Well, I can't speak to that. It doesn't hit you in the gut, the way seeing, like knowing that there's a genocide of the Yemeni people going on, and knowing that people in Gaza are living in an open air prison, basically. That. And yes, you're opposed to that. But that doesn't hit you right here the way images of a Ukrainian town being decimated does. And that, I mean, like I said, to call it racism may be inflammatory, but it's a bias. It's a subconscious bias that you have that is animating you in this moment to utter insanity. That is pushing you into utter insanity. This is a situation that can get apocalyptic very, very quickly. Michael Savage, the guy who we made fun of for doing the crazy rant on his cooking show, it's amazing how some of the voices of sanity are coming from the least likely places. And Michael Savage, very unlikely source of sanity, but he did a live stream. He says, look, I understand the impulse to step in front of the little guy being bullied by the big guy and want to stick up for the little guy. Yes, I understand the impulse. You have to understand this. We are talking about a major power here with nuclear weapons and a leader who now you cannot even assume at this point that Putin is a rational actor. That's another thing. That's another piece of racial bias that's driving this, right? We hear Saddam Hussein's a madman. Arafat's a madman. Ahmadinejad, madman. Gaddafi, madman. Yet we assume that Vladimir Putin is not a madman. We know he's an evil, megalomaniacal, cruel, but we don't assume he's a savage, perhaps because he's a white man. But this guy could be just as fucking unhinged as all those other guys and more. If he was a rational actor, he probably wouldn't have done what he's done already. So you have no fucking clue. Maybe it's COVID, maybe it's whatever. Maybe he thinks whatever. The world's ending. Mother Russia's going out on top. Fuck it all. You don't know. He could be like that. You can't assume that's not where he's coming from. So what are you, fucking nuts? This is insanity.
It is and it isn't. I mean, Putin has been telling the West for decades that NATO expansion was a red line. and particularly that Ukraine was a red line, that Ukraine could never join. He's been saying it for decades. And the West basically kept saying, go get your fucking shine box. So eventually, now you could say, even so, for strategic reasons, for economic reasons, it was crazy for him to bust the move. But you can't say it came out of nowhere. You can't say he didn't tell the West directly what his red lines were and that he was not roundly ignored, scoffed at, laughed at, essentially. Until, okay, Vladimir, okay, you go off to the corner. We're gonna
look, and I
do
just
our
feel
thing.
like we should add to that, because Chris Hedges wrote in his article this as well. Like, if we're going to be anti-war, we have to be anti-war on both sides and say unequivocally, obviously, Putin is a war criminal because he did this. Like, he was provoked.
Yeah.
Yes, he was provoked.
Yes.
But he pulled the trigger. Once you pull the trigger and invade a country and target civilians, you are a war criminal.
Sure.
Period. End of story. I made the Sopranos analogy a few weeks ago about, Putin being like Tony, and the Ukraine being the sort of like sporting goods store that he could raid. I'll make another Sopranos analogy for people who may need a little bit of help with this right now. He's not so much Tony as he is Ralph. Ralph was the fucking sadistic, fucking just bone deep evil bastard who everybody wanted to kill with their bare hands, but they couldn't, because he's got money, he's got power, he's got contacts, he's a made guy. When Ralph beat the stripper to death in the parking lot, Tony wanted to kill him right there, but he couldn't. Even though it was the right thing to do. Tony knew it was the right thing to do, both morally, strategically, everything, but he couldn't, because the guy was too big. And so Putin might just be too big. Like, yeah, you hate to have to deal with this guy, right? Of course, you see him targeting civilians and just murdering people. Of course, you want to fucking take him out. But sometimes you can't, because to try and do so would be to escalate things to a point that would be suicidal. And in this case, suicidal to the point where you could be talking about, a nuclear exchange. And even if it doesn't get to that point, you're talking about a world war.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, go ahead.
I mean, I don't know. If it gets to that point, on the upside, I was very disappointed with the aesthetics of COVID. I feel like most of the post-apocalypse genre has promised us much cooler outfits, a lot of leather-clad bikers. We didn't get any of that. I think a good nuclear exchange might do it, though.
Yeah, that's true. Then you can have...
That's when you get the Mad Max shit. That's when you break out the pink mohawks and the spiked epaulets. Yeah,
the masks would have to be cooler. You can't have people walking around a nuclear wasteland with like the blue cloth masks and stuff like that. They'd have to have gas masks.
No, you're gonna have like the World War I style,
right?
With
Exactly.
the tube coming out. Yeah, no, totally like Pink Floyd animation kind of shit going on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's an argument for it. Maybe I'll join the libs in celebrating Zelensky.
I mean, it's funny because like as this reality gets, I feel like people are slowly catching on. The question is, will they catch on in time? Will the government catch on? Does the government not want World War III? I don't know. It's just fucking insane.
It seems to me that they do not. They're very hesitant to do anything. I think their strategy right now with the economic boycotts is to piss off the oligarchs to the point that they take out Putin for the West. That's what I think their basic strategy is. Basically, they're trying to get the to stick with your Sopranos.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. That's really taking
the captains to take out the
right. That's really taking the Sopranos analogy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you could be right about that. You could be right. We will.
That's
see.
why they're so intent on taking away shit from the oligarchs, because they're like, if there are any movers in Russia who are going to be able to get to this guy, it's going to be them.
It's them.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like us, hit the subscribe button. It's either this way or this way. I don't know. I can never tell because of the whole webcam mirror image recording thing. If you really like us, you could support us at Patreon or Substack. The links are in the description. If you don't like us, try watching another one of our videos. You might like that one a little better. If after that you still don't like us, perhaps it just wasn't meant to be.